Rewind-A-Dynamite from the post-wrestling site. AEW, lighting up the fuse. Sit back and enjoy the bubbly as we hear from John and Wai Ting. Where we're going, we don't need roads. And if the buck stops here, this thing might blow. Everything you hear are opinions of the show. And if you don't like it, go to the forums and let them know.
All right, everyone. I am John Pollock here with an energized Wai Ting, man who is coming off another spectacular edition of the Wellness Policy. And dare I say, did I happen to tune into Wellness Policy and instead get a book club from Wai Ting? I mean, I got a book review right out of my avenue.
I read a whole 10-page kids book for this episode of the Wellness Policy. Okay?
I loved it.
So. Read it on air. It was a lot of fun talking about mindfulness with Jordan Goodman and Neil Flanagan, a topic that is, Jordan is very knowledgeable and very passionate about. So we get to hear a little bit about, his journey through just this thing called mindfulness and how we can employ tactics throughout the course of our day, which I hope, John, maybe you might have taken something away from.
I meditated while I listened. I did my Johnny Gargano plank, like right here on this desk as I listened.
Cool.
If someone tunes into the Wellness Policy this month, will they learn more about Neil on this show or the last Detox episode with Jordan and Braden?
Certainly Detox. Yeah, probably more than you want to learn about Neil Flanagan.
There you go. That's a plug for two shows, so you can compare. Wai and I are also going to be back on Thursday with Rewind-A-Wai. It is AWA Super Sunday. Which tonight, a great palate cleanser to set you up for Super Sunday. I think tonight's Coffin match it brought me back to the Sheik Adnan El Casey and Jerry Blackwell match with Vern Gagne and Mad Dog Vachon.
If somebody would want to measure the amount of growth in professional wrestling between the years 1983 to 2026, well, this would be a great show to watch right after tonight's edition of Dynamite because who would be the closest worker? Maybe Wendy Richter. I'm trying to think, of somebody who might be able to even come close to a modern standard. But this is wrestling at a much more innocent time, at least, when it comes to the in-ring product, and maybe not so innocent when it comes to some of the personalities involved.
No, we will have to talk about one of the most despicable individuals in pro wrestling history on this show as well. But that is coming up on Rewind-A-Wai on Thursday, postwrestlingcafe.com. We're going to Fresno, California tonight, the Save Mart Center, with WrestleTix reporting 3,584 tickets distributed. They ran here almost exactly a year ago, March the 12th, for a Dynamite, 3,220. And I will say we have largely talked about the atmospheric improvements for Dynamites, where they have found a lot more smaller venues, and they've generally filled them. And it makes, I think, for a world of difference, as did tonight, where they had 3,500 people inside of an 18,000-seat arena. And even tarped off, I think, it makes that difference. And there were times the crowd just did not seem all that into things at certain points. They went insane when Marina Shafir brought that table out in the No Holds Barred match as well. But I think sometimes you're not going to have the pick of venues that you can run. Sometimes there's monetary advantages to where you're running and such. But this is the type of place that I think it does do a number on the atmosphere compared to other places that they've strategically booked for most TVs.
Agreed. Look no further than something like the Coffin match where those two were killing each other, and it just didn't feel the same.
There were moments where it literally felt like they had muted the crowd. You heard nothing at certain points. It was so silent, and it was that was probably the biggest example of it. But yeah, we're going to get right into the show because they recapped Revolution. And with that, we come back. Blake Christian already in the ring. Man's not going to get his entrance. And since we had last spoken on Monday, they announced on Tuesday Will Ospreay's return match on Dynamite. So since Saturday, the man has returned to AEW, announced he was cleared on X, then announced for his return match, and having said return match, all in the span of 4 nights. And here he is back. What did you think about this announcement of him having his match so quickly?
Well, like the knowledge that he was cleared, in February, doesn't make this that much of a shocker. Like seeing him do what he did on Sunday doesn't make this that much of a shocker. Like he looks like he's fit enough to be able to pull off a television match of this, like to pull off is he fit enough to pull off a Will Ospreay standard match that we might envision in our heads for a pay-per-view? I still have my doubts about that, but like for something like, a television match, I felt it's not like you're going to wait until All In or close to All In to, sit this guy out till then. So it didn't surprise me that much.
This to me, I had no question of like him being ready for this. I just look at like maximizing all of these things that I really feel that just showing up on Sunday was okay. You do the unannounced deal. That's fine. I think like you would have had a lot of interest of just Will Ospreay speaks for the first time on Wednesday. He could have used tonight to announce I'm cleared and give us a week, promote this for a week. And I would have argued that a promo tonight where he gets on the mic and says, why am I back so quickly? Because I had one date every morning that I woke up and saw August 30th, and I am making it to Wembley. I think that would have been really goddamn effective when you have tickets on sale this week. And you could have just built this up for a little longer. I think I didn't see the rush to get all of this stuff in. Like it just feels on he's obviously going to be we're going to find out what a pay-per-view match looks like. Cause there's no way this guy's missing Dynasty.
No. My feeling on all this is that number one, you're probably dealing with a Will Ospreay who has been itching to wrestle. Look at what he did on Saturday. It's like taking a dog to a dog park that like hasn't been outside in 6 months. And I think you're going to get Will Ospreay wrestling pretty consistently. So those people who might, like to delay an extra week, I get the sense Tony wants to be able to give a Will Ospreay match to his paying customers, like in every town, if Ospreay is willing.
Well, he probably will be willing, pardon the pun. I also feel that for every Ospreay match, Danielson should probably be the guy calling his match because it just seems like this is now the man's spirit animal, and we are going to get Ospreay's mind conveyed through Danielson's words, and I do like that pairing.
Danielson, like he really is like concerned parent now for all of these wrestlers, who are coming back from injury. Anytime you have a wrestler coming back from a concussion or a neck injury or any sort of like long-term injury, I'd love to hear Danielson.
It's like he's got several children.
Yeah.
Darby has left the family and he's never coming back. He's lost him.
He's a lost
Will is holding on by the fingertips, and he still has a hold on this man for now. Yeah. We should also mention there were 2 like very weird moments on this show. The first was as Ospreay's on his way to the ring and Danielson's like talking about Ospreay, Excalibur mentions, and Brian, Tony Storm was dropped. And Danielson has no idea what Excalibur is talking about. And he's like, I was just talking about Ospreay. And then Excalibur explains that Tony Storm was taken out and Mina Shirakawa will take her place tonight. And it was like, Danielson's like apologizing and like, he just had no idea. Like, did I miss some tweet or something? This angle I have no idea about. And then there was another one later in the show that we can get to later where like Omega announces that Swerve is the number 1 contender. And then during Swerve's promo says, well, that was news to me that I'm the number 1 contender. Like, it just felt like this had like that kind of flying by the seat of your pants feeling that I can certainly buy AEW falling into because those were pretty glaring to me. Just that they just seemed like you had your performers that were just not on the same page as the others.
These sort of shows coming right off of a pay-per-view, especially one on Sunday, like probably doesn't give that much time for, who knows? Like you're probably not getting a similar level of preparation for production, for anything, right? Because you're just like, you have fewer days to really prepare for like an entire show. So it wouldn't surprise me if there were some miscommunication issues as a result of all that stuff. But this was a very glaring one, especially like the Danielson one, I mean, because clearly Excalibur was teeing him up for something that Brian was completely unprepared for, or had maybe completely had a brain fart live on television, and it was kind of embarrassing.
Yeah, I mean, his setup was Tony Storm was dropped. I mean, he might have thought she got fired or something. I mean, it wasn't. Anyway, so we go back to the Ospreay match. He gets the welcome back chance, and Danielson says that Ospreay's surgery was worse than his surgery that he had in 2014, and Ospreay has come back quicker. And then in the most facetious question of the night, Danielson asks, imagine Blake Christian beating Will Ospreay in his first match back. Just imagine that.
Hard to, but yes. Mm-hmm.
Bro, nobody saw it coming. Blake Christian won. So no, Trey Baxter did not pull out the win here. Instead, he goes after the neck of Will. He hit this dive through the turnbuckle, DDTing Will onto the floor. Then from there, hits a springboard 450, a lethal injection, and an Osai DDT. And then he sets up for his own hidden blade, and Ospreay stops it, hits his hidden blade, and pins Christian in 7 minutes and 53 seconds.
Mm. So I found the match to be very entertaining, actually, but I I think we could say, compared to maybe what we think of a standard Ospreay performance, this to me did feel conservative. Like, if you look at an Ospreay Fletcher as like a 10, okay, this would be more of a 5, which for most people would be their 10. But for Will Ospreay, I would maybe say it was more.
This was a very
5.
simple, just TV match. I think this was.
And I don't think anybody should be upset about that. In fact, most of the negativity I saw from his appearance on Sunday was people feeling like he did too much. People being too concerned that the guy is doing too much too soon. So this, to me, like, was, after we seeing what he's capable of doing, we know he could still do the dives. I feel like on pay-per-view, there's no doubt in my mind he will be trying to be Will Ospreay prior to this next surgery. But for a TV match against Blake Christian that went like 5 minutes here, like, this felt like an appropriately scaled back version of himself. But I still found the match incredibly engaging, and much of that was due to Blake Christian, who really was able to provide much of the spectacle that we might usually expect out of a Will Ospreay in this match. But Christian looked incredible here.
Christian's really good. He's one of many that it's tough to stand out, but he got a great spotlight here, and gave him a lot in this match. Like, I had no issues with this match at all. Yeah. Like, for what the purpose it served. Ospreay gets on the mic and he immediately calls out Jon Moxley, says, I don't need a weapon to snatch someone's neck. I can do it with my bare fucking hands. And out come the Death Riders, and Ospreay charges after Moxley and Yuta, who are entering through the crowd. And in the ring, he pulls in Moxley and he teases the Tiger Driver 91. And he is stopped by Pac, who puts him in the brutalizer. And Ospreay would recover, chases Pac to the back. And it would seem that we are setting up this run through the Death Riders, at least Pac in the midst here, but you could go through Yuta and others. And I feel it's going to be Ospreay and Moxley Moxley's going to take that Tiger Driver.
Yeah, maybe finally getting that fishing.
Oh, he's going fishing. He's going fishing with the Tiger Driver.
Going fishing. He's sold his rods. So we should also mention, like, through the Christian match, I thought like Christian did a good job of establishing the neck injury. Like, he was like plastered with a kinesio tape all over it. So having the brutalizer be a move that specifically targets the neck area, I think, is a great way to follow up in the lead up to the Moxley match. So again, Brian's commentary, I think, did a great job of like emphasizing
I think Danielson should call all this guy's matches when possible. I know he's not doing every show, but I think like that is a combo that really does work. It brings out the best in Danielson too. So with that, do you think Ospreay and Pac, they should have done it just right away here?
Maybe we'll get that next week. Okay. Announced 2 days before. If I could see it for Dynasty. I think it's a big enough match for Dynasty, but they also
Ospreay and Pac?
Yeah, I think so. What, you think Mox? You think Mox and Ospreay
I think they're going to rush. I think they're going to get to him and Moxley that quick. I do.
Yeah. Well, what is Dynasty? How many weeks are we?
It's only...
Oh, it's a whole month, like almost.
It's April 12th.
12th. So. Okay. Yeah. Never mind. At this pace, he will wrestle Pac definitely before that.
Could he face Moxley on Dynamite in 2 weeks? That's possible too.
It's of course, yes.
Moxley and Yuta, we go right into their match with Juice Robinson and Ace Austin. Danielson explains Moxley can recover from beatings very quickly, citing how he's wrestled on Dynamites after Texas death matches before. So that's how he could absorb this beating from Osprey and rebound here for this match with the Bang Bang Gang. Ace Austin hit this Fosbury flop that grazed Moxley, who bumped off of it. Danielson explains, I get it why people are cheering Moxley, but he did that interview with his wife Renee and said he has no regrets, including what he did to me with a plastic bag and what he did to Will Ospreay. Mm-hmm. So we're still he's gonna go to his grave with this grudge with John Moxley. Moxley takes the necklace of Ace Austin and wraps it through his mouth. Not quite MJF barbed wire level, but still uncomfortable. Garcia got yanked off the apron by Austin Gunn, so Juice hits the left hand of God to Yuta, and then after Yuta takes out Juice with a dive, Moxley pins Ace Austin with the Death Rider in 11 minutes and 8 seconds. So the Death Riders recovered here, and yeah, it will be Death Riders versus Osprey.
Mm-hmm. So, I continue to find it really interesting, just by the matchmaking here. Death Riders versus Bang Bang Gang. I mean, it looks like the Death Riders, at least for this month, are back to playing a full-on heel stable, including John Moxley. And so I find it really amazing how malleable they are in their roles, depending on the combination. We literally saw John Moxley on Revolution go from being a heel in the Takeshita match to being a babyface in the post match to being back to a heel when Osprey started to attack him, and that carried itself through onto Dynamite, and it was all effective. So I know Shades of Grey is sort of almost like a bit of a cliche thing to say, but it really is the case with somebody like John Moxley and by extension the Death Riders.
I think it's extremely rare where you can get to this point where it's not like John Moxley is necessarily changing all that much, but he can adapt certain things that it can work. Like, it would make no sense for Osprey to come back and just be, forget about the Moxley thing. He should be Moxley still has to atone for all of his actions, and he also does not regret any of these things either. It's not like he's just, it was mind games. It's like he owns all of his things on the past, but he is also held to all of his actions of the past as well. And I would be the first to complain about inconsistencies, but I don't find him to be an inconsistent character, and you've got to be careful with it so it isn't jarring. But I don't find this jarring the way they're handling Moxley specific, and then the Death Riders. The Death Riders have never really been all that much on the babyface side. It's like they back Moxley. He's their leader.
They have flirted with it, certainly. Like when we're strictly talking about who the fans want to cheer for, namely Marina Shafir going up against Lance Archer, for instance, right? But they've done a really great job of straddling the line and, again, depending on who's on the other side of the Death Riders, making you want to cheer for or against that member of the group.
Kenny Omega, after Revolution, addresses Swerve. This is where he suggests that we play a game of Risk. And I had this idea of buying a pay-per-view and these two sit down and they play a game of Risk.
I'm sure that would make for a fun Twitch stream or something.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Yeah.
This is when he breaks the news to Swerve that he is the number one contender. And he says, you're a dangerous man. Why don't you put that number one contendership on the line against me? And later, Swerve is going to have a counteroffer because he's got to process this information. He's like, what? I'm the number one contender? It's great news.
He is an EVP, so Kenny would have that information probably first. Before
I guess this was very confidential information. He was,
yeah.
Swerve doesn't even know. Okay, I got a secret. Gabe Kidd and Darby Allin. Okay, this was shades of Greg Gagne and Jim Brunzell at the peak of the high flyers. Okay, so we go outside. First, there was a video from Gabe Kidd. He is not afraid of death, which was going to be challenged tonight. And he has had dreams of putting Darby under the ground. And Kidd says tonight is the end of Darby, and he wants to meet him in the parking lot. You rat! So he met him outside of the arena, and it starts with Gabe Kidd wandering outside, and then a car pulls up, and inside is Darby, and they immediately start brawling on the car, and Darby goes to Kidd's eyes. He I don't know, pours ether in his face or something and just puts him into the trunk. Cameraman is just has no issue here at all of like what I'm watching here. This is basically a snuff film he is recording for live broadcast. And then Darby gets into the car and he drives into this heap of garbage and flips the car with Kidd in the trunk. So it's just the most ridiculous thing we've reviewed in some time here. And out comes Darby. I'm gonna give what's the percentage that Darby just full on like did this stunt like in the car?
I put it at about maybe like 70%.
Like it's definitely above 50, right? Can we agree it's above 50? Okay.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
Listen,
I don't know what sort of insurance like policies this show might have on its performers. Like,
I thought you meant on the car. This could have been a rental.
I don't know if they're salvaging this one, but yeah, like, so there were many edits in this scene. Yes. So I imagine they did have a stunt driver, but it wouldn't surprise me to learn that these guys were actually in the car for any of this.
I don't know why I got such a kick out of this, but when Darby crawls out of this car and then he pops the trunk and Kidd just flies out of the trunk, I just thought it was so funny. I'm just a sick person here. And Excalibur's number one concern, are we going to have a match? The most depressing part here is that this crowd, they were so silent as they were on the announcers afterwards. Maybe they thought they were not getting this match anymore. But then Darby puts him on a production truck and wheels Gabe Kidd into the arena and then puts Kidd in a straitjacket. And the bell rings. Kidd wrestles this whole match with a straitjacket on. He manages to cut Darby by sending him into the steps. And my God, did Darby bleed here from this step shot. Darby was scoop slammed onto the wheels of his skateboard, hits a code red off the buckle, and then goes to bite Kidd's nose, hits him with 2 consecutive coffin drops, and then does his crazy tope, which flings Kidd into the coffin, which closes in 9 minutes and 57 seconds. A brutal affair here between these two. Everything you would expect out of a Darby Allin coffin match.
Including, like, pre-recorded like video to start the show off with a wild stunt involving a vehicle. I actually thought this match, like, crowd aside, I actually thought this was a great coffin match. To say these two are ambitious with their spot, I feel would be a bit of an understatement. And
Taker did a few of these, like with the cars, and I think he once did that tope ending before. But other than that, this was pretty original.
Like, I feel like they pulled off almost everything like perfectly here. From again, like the crazy car flip off the top, even a pre-taped, I thought it looked and came across really well. And then the unpredictability of trying to work with a straitjacket, I feel like Kidd managing to pull off that like power slam in the straitjacket with no arms, I thought was really quite impressive.
I thought Kidd was like all the focus was like on Darby's like offense and stuff, but like Gabe Kidd like when he was wheeled down and you just see the shot in his eyes, like this was a guy that was selling as though the man had just been decapitated in a car. Like he was very good here. This was a super physical match. Like I think in another setting, like I think this would have just like tore the house down because it was insane for it was 10 minutes of a match, but you had the whole preamble before that outside.
It felt very much to me like this would have been the match on the pay-per-view, if not for the fact that you also had Texas Death there. And I also think like that this was certainly the right call to separate those two. Ideally, this would have had a bigger crowd reaction than, unfortunately, what this crowd in this venue was able to offer. But I still think it was right to put this on television to separate it, and then you essentially got the TV match on the pay-per-view itself. But in terms of creativity and effort, like I thought these two did a great job.
What would a best of 7 coffin series look like? This is step 1.
It would end with the guitar coffin.
It would have to.
From TNA.
I think that's the only way you end things with Elijah. So Darby says he's going to hold that throttle until he sees God or he wins that AEW World Heavyweight title, and he warns MJF he's coming. again, I'm always going to harp on this, that I think one of the best structures they have in place is that, again, everyone, they may have detours, but the goal is the title for all these people. He gets through Gabe Kidd. I'm back to tunnel vision on this title. And it's all of these guys. They're all gunning for this belt, that it makes it so important. And it makes MJF feel as though he has the most important reward, because everyone is gunning for this thing. So I really like how everyone, like, that is where their ultimate focus is.
100%. Yeah. It, yes, makes the title seem valuable. It also makes the match unpredictable for the next pay-per-view. You don't exactly know who's going to be challenging MJF, and that makes the TV that much more worthwhile to watch, to find the answer to that. And also, you can branch into your rest of the card feuds by everybody chasing after it and people failing and costing each other, you know, those title shots, right? So it's a great way of building to these shows that we've seen them employ very effectively for several cycles now.
Yeah, like you will probably see like Kenny or Swerve going for this title, but you could argue for Darby, you could argue for Andrade. Like, you have all these options at your disposal, and that's a good problem to have. Then we go to On the Road with Luchasaurus and Jack Perry with this Jurassic Express that they have obviously invested something in this vehicle. They did not flip this bus, by the way. Maybe that will be a future angle that they do. Driving to Fresno, and they arrive at the arena, and Perry explains that Revolution was a really good night. And
how is Luchasaurus driving with like a broken
one arm?
Yeah.
Well,
dangerous.
you know, they were going to Northern California, so it's basically a straight drive. You just need, you know, cruise control.
You don't have to turn? Okay.
Yeah, you're fine. You're fine. He explains it was a great night for my family, but then the Bucks walk in, and it was a rough night for their families, and they're going to start fighting to the top again. They used to consider Okada their family, and Luchasaurus calls him a bitch. So that's our main event tonight with Jack Perry and the Young Bucks against the Don Callis family.
Mm-hmm.
Prince Nana brings out Mr. Dangerous, Swerve Strickland, and he sits in the middle of the ring with the lights down, and he went to war with Brody King, and the only winners of war are the ones with power. I've dealt with organizations with power, mentions being stuck in developmental, and he blames the Young Bucks for not being a two-time champion. And this is when he says, I had no idea I was the number one contender until Omega said I was. And it's no point in me beating Kenny Omega twice if there's nothing for me to gain. Valid point. So he says what he wants is power. He wants Kenny's EVP status. So next week in St. Paul, Minnesota, in the biggest match in St. Paul since Super Sunday, it's Swerve Strickland versus Kenny Omega, number one contender versus EVP.
Yeah, you and I thought this would be Dynasty.
No, this is
next week.
This is why I think Osprey and Moxley. Maybe it'll get announced on Twitter this week. But I think this certainly, will suggest, Kenny evens the series, and it's Kenny going for the belt in Canada. I think that's a very likely outcome here.
Certainly, at least it puts it in doubt, and obviously when you think about like Swerve versus MJF, it doesn't make as much sense on paper having two heels, atop the card. But I also think that like they could make that work if they wanted it to. But yeah, this is really interesting, and it does make me wonder why. Okay, they never announced Brody King versus Swerve was for the number one contendership, did they?
No.
Right. So why wouldn't they have just made Swerve versus Kenny a number one contenders match, other than maybe their desire to want to like do this EVP thing? Like,
are you saying for next week's match to make it a number one contenders match?
Yeah. Why wouldn't they just have announced that as a number one contenders matchup?
Well, they explained here, like Swerve's already beaten him. Why would he have to beat Kenny again?
So I guess the explanation is Kenny is not like near the ranking, or what? Like Kenny's not number one contender, or he's not a justifiable number one contender unless he beats Swerve. Is that
yes?
The idea?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, to me that sounds a little bit complicated, but whatever. It's fine.
Swerve beat Kenny. He beat Brody King. He's next in line for the title match, and Kenny wants him to put that on the line. Like Swerve could technically get the title match right now is basically what this was laid out for, but he wants the hook is.
And you're saying Kenny's record in comparison does not match up to Swerve, and therefore you couldn't justify a number one contenders match straight up between these two. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, it's just if they had just flat out cold announced number one contenders match, it's like, well, what was the point of the Swerve Kenny match we just saw a few weeks ago? Swerve beat him.
True, you're right.
Therefore,
yes.
you just be doing the match.
So. Yeah, you're right. But yeah, this whole EVP thing is I guess somewhat interesting to me because I think there it could be possibility that Swerve wins this one and somehow becomes an EVP. I will say though, I think I still don't
hate the EVP.
Well, let me just say I don't know what an EVP even really is in AEW, especially like Kenny's version of what an EVP is and what that power entails, because we've never really seen Kenny exercise it. We've seen what the Bucks are doing, and essentially it's just another way of like, I guess you could make your own matches and like you get a fancy locker room
but they don't do that anymore.
They don't do, yeah, right. So, but we've never seen Kenny do all that stuff. So like, do we know exactly like what Swerve is actually wanting here? Is it maybe it's benefits, which are always
that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, like maybe he just wants healthcare.
Could be that. Yeah.
You know what? And wouldn't that be apropos if he could then get a pay-per-view in Canada with his new healthcare plan?
Maybe they'll have a Texas health match.
A Texas health match.
Yeah,
That would be amazing.
Just for benefits.
So Renee is with Speedball, and Speedball explains how sometimes you see somebody and they're a star. Me, I had to prove to everyone to become a star and convince others to believe in me. I've looked up to people like Kenny Omega, and I have the mental toughness. I'm a winner. And I'm going to say this. I thought this was like, by Mike Bailey standards, I thought like this was a step above his usual promos. Like, I don't know if this guy's ever going to be like a great speaker, but it felt like to me this guy is at least he felt a bit more comfortable in this.
I feel like that's certainly like the intent of like this period of Mike Bailey. Like he's getting consistent mic time now. We've seen it with like, Kevin Knight getting to talk a whole lot more, and I mean that guy is already a natural. I think Bailey needs a lot more reps and maybe coaching and just like
maybe
pressure.
His interviews just needed eye contact. Maybe that was the difference.
Could be. Yeah.
Wasn't this a weird positioning here of Renee?
Renee doing the over the shoulder is somewhat unusual here, but I don't know who knows why they decided on that. But I mean I think you're seeing Speedball like put in a lot of effort into this part of his game, and I already see some improvement certainly.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he can. He can shed the no Mike Bailey nickname.
So right. So he too, like he mentioned Kenny here.
He's looked up to him.
Well, like obviously you don't say that without any reason, right? So what do you think that's building to?
Well, Kenny's taller.
But Speedball Kenny, is that something that they might be building us towards, or is this just Bailey like even declaring his own world title aspiration?
I mean, it's possible. Like, let's play this out. You've got a month till Dynasty. If you were to put Kenny in the position of number one contender after next week and doing him in Speedball, let's remember, they have a bunch of TVs in Canada leading up to Dynasty, and doing Omega and Speedball on one of those Canadian shows would make a whole lot of sense as sort of, Kenny's last big match before going for the title at Dynasty. Yeah, I could definitely see that.
Even if Kenny loses, I think you could still do that match.
Yeah, the end of March, like not next week, the following Wednesday, they're in Winnipeg for Kenny's hometown. Like Kenny and Speedball in Winnipeg? Sure.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah. So we go to Speedball Mike Bailey against the Iron Man of Dynamite, Mark Davis, who gets a match every single week. I don't think there's been a Wednesday he has missed since the Jake Doyle injury.
You can tell Tony Khan loves this guy. And
a lot of people love this guy. He really has stepped up here. And I really enjoyed this. 10 minutes, 49 seconds they go. And Bailey he was an amazing babyface here. And Davis was a great opponent for him. This was during picture-in-picture, so most people might have missed it. But Davis lifted up Bailey on the edge of the apron, and it was almost like an X-Plex where he just threw him up and dropped him onto the edge. And
they showed a replay after commercial.
Okay, so then people would have seen it there. But it just looked like the worst way to come down on the edge of the apron. He just flew up and came down. He's selling the lower back, and Bayley would thwart off Davis with a series of spinning wheel kicks to the head, then gets hit with the lariat and a deadlift pile driver. Everyone thought it was over, and Bayley kicks out. So Davis goes for another, and this time Bayley turns it into a Rana, hooks the legs, kick out, and then it's a moonsault into the double knees, tornado kick, and wins with the Ultima weapon. And really entertaining match that these two had.
A really strong Speedball win, I would say, putting him over the much larger and impressive looking opponent here, who like pretty much dominated him for much of this match. So it was like a really great David Goliath match of the highest caliber between maybe, one of your best underdogs and one of your best big men right now in the entire company. So it does feel to me like they're setting something up big for Speedball on top of all the mic time that they're giving him. Of course.
I think you hit the nail on the head there with like an Omega match and doing it in like Winnipeg. Like I could totally see that being the match. Like they do seem to be focusing a lot on Speedball of late. And, this is like a lot of times it would have been Mark Davis just winning this match and Speedball winning in this fashion. Like it does feel they're building him up for something of significance on TV and probably another big trios match at the pay-per-view, you would think.
Yeah.
So then they go to MJF from after the pay-per-view, stating that he was part of the greatest dog collar match, the greatest Iron Man match, and now the greatest Texas death match. He's the greatest AEW champion ever, Mr. Revolution. He says that he can feel all of the pain now that the adrenaline has worn off, but it was all worth it. He possesses the only belt that matters. On his 30th birthday, he's going to be the greatest of all time. There were already only a few ahead of me, and now Hangman is off the board of those names, and I've still got 20 years to go, and he is off to Disney World. He also gave himself about 100 nicknames or t-shirt ideas in this 2-minute promo as well.
Yes, he did, yeah. These like post-match promos, especially after these like sort of like very bloody affairs, always like are some of the best materials that wrestlers can provide on the microphone. And that's especially the case with MJF. He gives us some of his best stuff like in these sort of adrenaline-filled moments. So a very strong, very wild and chaotic MJF promo.
Another wild and chaotic promo was Okada with Rocky Romero and Trent. And Okada laughs at the idea of being family with the Young Bucks. I'm only loyal to one family, unlike Takeshita, who's shaking hands with John Moxley. And tonight they're going to pick up a win for the Don Callis family.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. A bit of a chaos reunion here.
Yes, very chaotic. Then we see the footage. Toni Storm laid out in her dressing room. Mina Shirakawa is there, as is Luther, as Renee comes, and they find the unconscious, timeless Toni Storm. If there was one thing, and granted, like, who knows how much the Storm issue affected this show, but, like, I would say of everything that came out of Sunday, like, I felt Ronda Rousey was probably at the top of that, and I just, like, if you were someone that heard about Ronda Rousey and cared, this was the show you were tuning into, and I just didn't think like there was really no follow-up, and maybe there couldn't be any follow-up, but I would have at least wanted to show this video, like make a big deal, like Ronda Rousey was here, like even if you didn't have Toni Storm at your disposal, like I would have made a big deal out of this. Like they did show this, but it was so fleeting on the show.
Right, agreed. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if maybe they were going to do more of it if Toni, actively had a part in the show. Do we know why Toni wasn't?
I don't know what the story is. Like they announced the match and then pulled the match today. I didn't even hear about the change until, well, I found out just as Bryan Danielson found out at the beginning of the show. So, So in her place is Mina Shirakawa taking on Marina Shafir, no holds barred, with maybe the most unlikely outcome in recent memory on an AEW show. So they have a full-on like fight here with all these weapons involved. Barbed wire bat is brought to the ring by Mina Shirakawa. She also has champagne bottles, and Shafir is throwing her all over the place, starts chugging back the champagne and spits it into Mina's face. And then Mina knocks the bottle out of her hand, tilt-a-whirls Marina onto a chair and hits a sling blade onto the chair, fights off the mother's milk when Marina grabs it by going to Marina's eyes. And then Shafir pulls out a table and this crowd goes insane. This was This was our WWE quotient of the night because this table was the most over thing on this show. And then we see Marina Shafir go to suplex Mina Shirakawa off the edge of the apron through the table. Mina cleared this entire table, and Shafir took all of this table. Shafir basically suplexed herself through a table, which is quite the feat to pull off, and did set up the finish because then Mina breaks the champagne bottle over Marina's head, hits Storm Zero, and Mina Shirakawa pins Marina Shafir in 10 minutes and 55 seconds.
Very surprised outcome, obviously, with the replacement on short notice, getting the victory over Marina Shafir, who already lost on the pay-per-view to Toni Storm. So that's 2 losses now for Shafir, who has lost to both Toni Storm and her essentially sidekick, right? So it makes you wonder, like, what exactly is changing in plans, if this was always the plan somehow, or if they are just pivoting really hard for whatever reason. So the booking is very unexpected and totally surprising here. Yeah,
I'll say if they do end up getting to the tag match, like obviously Mina is the natural partner for Toni Storm. It adds credibility to Mina because you would look at her as like the kind of like lowest on the lowest rung of those 4 here. But it all depends on like what you're gonna get out of this Ronda thing at some point here. But
But this is almost too soon to like build
it is
Mina,
yeah, like this will
Ronda's
probably
be
forgotten very quickly.
Because Ronda's not going to be wrestling until at least May or beyond, right?
They could send out a tweet on Friday that she's wrestling on Wednesday. You never know. Way
she could. Yeah,
okay.
St. Paul, Minnesota would be the place. But I thought the match itself was like, I mean, it was entertaining, and it got the crowd with the table and also Shirakawa's charisma, in my opinion. She's somebody that you could put in a position like this, even though she hasn't really been featured all that much lately. And this crowd, I think, will immediately see her as like a credible player.
And a tough spot, like Mina has to replace Toni Storm. It's like she's coming in much colder, and they've got to do a hardcore match after they've just seen that insanity between Darby and Gabe Kidd 45 minutes before as well. Yeah. So I thought all things considered, they did well with the placement. Renee speaks with Andrade. He's on a roll after his win over Bandito, and he too wants the AEW title. And John Cruz comes in, and he's got Don Callis on the phone and passes him a briefcase of money. And this is when Andrade realizes that they're working with MJF, which is also what, had been the concern within the Don Callis family about whether we're working with this guy. Well, we got the smoking gun here with the briefcase of cash. Andrade is very reluctant about this, but he accepts the money, and he has been sent off to take care of Darby Allin.
So we got Darby versus MJF at some point, with both of them vying for MJF's championship.
Yes, you could certainly see that being more TV than longer. But yes, we will see. Future match coming. And then this weekend, we got the Slam Dunk lineup. So they're doing Collision over 2 nights. Saturday, we'll have, and both of these are following the NCAA tournament. So whenever they end, that's when the show will start. Saturday has Kyle Fletcher against Robbie Eagles for the TNT championship. Which I think is going to be a killer match between those two.
They build that as a teacher versus student match.
Yes.
With, they credit Eagles for essentially discovering Fletcher.
The Brawling Birds against the Sisters of Sin. We can see if they get both birds with one stone. Claudio and Daniel Garcia. By the way, Claudio now dual contract with AEW and CMLL. They have announced. So maybe they were concerned that Claudio was going to get raided. But they're like, no, you only have to sign the dual contract. Like, I don't know how these dual contracts quite work. This is the first time we've had an AEW talent sign the deal. So
right. I know like MXM do a lot of appearances down there among like several people who might do a lot of frequent appearances. But I don't know, like it's some promotion, some good press for CMLL rather than everybody going one way, And for somebody like Claudio, who's not exactly like, you don't need Claudio Castagnoli on every single edition of Dynamite or like Collision, right? He's done
Arena Mexico on Friday, and then he's back wrestling on Collision the next night. Like, he's not even going to miss dates if needed.
True.
So
You're right. Yeah.
So it'll be Claudio and Daniel Garcia against Commander and Mascara Dorada, and then Rush and Dralistico in action. Sunday will be Orange Cassidy and Roderick Strong against Jay Lethal and Lee Johnson, the Divine Dominion in action, and then Mystico and Jet Speed against Konosuke Takeshita, Josh Alexander, and El Clone for the Trios belts. So quite the lineup over 2 nights. And Kate from Montreal and John Kleinchester, they will be doing a show on Sunday covering both nights of slam dunk action.
In the Post-Wrestling Cafe.
Yes. And then the main event was Jack Perry and the Young Bucks against Okada, Trent, and Rocky Romero. I laughed out loud here at Okada trying to do the elite hand gesture as they just cornered him 3-on-1. The Don Callis family got control of Perry, and then Matt gets the tag, does his rolling Northern Lights, and then a double version to Rocky and Trent. It's an elbow swanton combo by the Bucks, and then double sharpshooters and a snare trap to the Don Callis family members. They get out with the rope breaks, hit the strong zero onto Matt when Perry makes the save, and then the Don Callis family lift all 3 for tombstones, but they are thwarted by biting on the testicles.
Yeah, taking a cue from Tony Storm.
Yes. That was more Super Sunday influence. Wait till you get to that match. Vern, sneaky. And then there's a BTE trigger, Perry's running knee, and they pin Rocky Romero in 12 minutes and 4 seconds. Not the match of the show, but fun main event, and was really just laying the groundwork for the post-match here.
Yeah, I would agree. So with that, I mean, I think with these Bucks multi-man matches, you're always expecting like a really high level showcase of like speed and coordination. And I feel like you got that here, and they really lit up this crowd. And it's always enjoyable. I will say I feel like a little bit spoiled in like getting a lot of these types of matches lately, and maybe the impact of this one doesn't really spring out as much after seeing like FTR or like the matches like the match last week on Dynamite as well. But you can always still appreciate them, of course.
So Nick says it's bittersweet because on Sunday we blew it. They were so sure they were going to win the belts that they brought their families to the show, our kids dressed up, and then they saw us lose. But we're willing to say FTR were the better team on Sunday. And then Matt, who had his birthday party after Revolution, got a pep talk from his dad, who I guess screamed at them, "Remember who you are! There's arenas full of fans that still love you," which would probably apply to a fair amount of venues, but not the Save Mart Center. And his dad is proud of them, but Matt says, we know who we are, and no one is going to stop us from getting those tag belts for a 4th time. And that prompts Cope, cross out, Cage, Cope to come out, and they explain they respect the Young Bucks. Sunday was one of the best matches Adam Copeland has ever seen, and says, FTR attacked your family. They also attacked my wife. And we had to await word for the last 6 months if Beth would need spinal fusion surgery. And for those whole 6 months, I couldn't look her in the eye. And now I've got to rectify that situation by taking the tag titles, the things that mean the most to FTR, more than their families mean to them. And Copeland says, we want to tell you to your face that at Dynasty, it's FTR against Cope, cross out, Cage, Cope in Vancouver for the tag titles. And this is when Christian butts in and says, hey, it's also personal for me too, because if we win these tag belts, it means a lot more money for me. But it also means we're the best of our generation and we're the best of your generation. And before the Bucks can respond, FTR come out, and no wheelchair for Stokely. He's healed. And FTR just like casually walk into the ring and just get the shit kicked out of them here. Super kick, spear, kicking the balls. And then the tug of war spot is a very sensitive, ambitious spot in pro wrestling. This might have been one of the worst, okay? I hated this. This was just so comical here. Like, oh, you got the belt. Oh, you got the belt. And then the Bucks relinquish the titles to Cope, cross out, Cage, and they stare down their opponents. And that is our first match announcement for Dynasty in Vancouver. And yeah, we will see next week if they're going to go with the other Canadian and Omega challenging for the belt. But I I would argue like this is one of those chances that I could potentially see them closing the show with this if this were Copeland and Cage winning the belts in Canada. We will see.
It's possible. Yeah. I don't necessarily sense it at this point being like the hottest program going into the pay-per-view, especially after like the long delay between these two matches. You know, like by this point, the Beth attack angle, like I know it happened, but it certainly doesn't feel as like urgent.
Man
Or as
hasn't
like
looked
hot.
in his wife's eyes in 6 months, Way.
Yeah. Well,
That includes Christmas.
that is a long
It's
time.
a long time.
But it like it doesn't feel like it's like a main event worthy level match to me. But it's still going to be one of the big selling points. I do find all of this though really interesting in that like it's so circled around the Bucks in ways that are more than just suggesting that the winner of this match will face the Bucks.
Oh,
like,
it's
to
very
me,
clear they're going to do Copeland and Cage against the Young Bucks,
but it feels to me like the Bucks will have more involvement just directly in this build towards Dynasty. Like they're so attached to all of this, including doing this sort of like tug of war deal. So I do wonder if there is a chance that they might turn this into a 3-way, because even the announcement of this like FTR
I think the 3-way is the big match down the road that they could end up doing.
Yeah. But with a month to go, like I mean that, and then like inserting the Bucks this hard. I mean, this entire match was like built around the Bucks. And then you just have like, you know, by the way, FTR versus Cage and Cope. Like these guys almost feel secondary to like the Bucks, who feel like the main characters in this whole thing.
They just lost. They did explain like we're gonna have to work our way back up. Like they should have another team to have to deal with before they should get another win before they're like back in the picture here, because I do see these teams being tied together like for Double or Nothing. Like you could probably stretch this, like that 3-way, you could go all the way further with eventually getting to that 3-way, but I think you're going to get all of these combinations.
Yeah. So we'll see how they play.
How did you feel about the show coming off Revolution, which was a really excellent show? And in terms of the follow-up, how did this one perform?
I always enjoy these shows. Like, just I think like the combination of like the style of wrestling and the quality of the wrestling and the creativity of a lot of the like just even the like something like a Coffin match, or even like I think Shirakawa versus Shafir had a lot of like great moments. I think AEW continues to be on a hot run. Now, is this one of the hotter Dynamites compared to previous? Probably not, and that's a lot of it is maybe due to crowd response, which is just probably too big of a venue for that sort of sustained level of reaction. You also probably didn't get the level of match that is like the type of must see, match of the year contender standard that we've been
what a failure
dealing
this
with.
show was.
But it was still like a very enjoyable show to me. Like I would not say this was a bad show in any way.
Yeah, and we're going from, I mean, look at the turnaround from World's End to Revolution. Like that was from December to March, and now we're we have 3.5 weeks until Dynasty. So now it's a really quick turnaround to the next pay-per-view as well. So you're gonna have to have all these
3.5 weeks is not that quick. Like it's
I'm
more standard,
comparing it to the opposite, where
yes.
we had 2.5 months in between shows. So I would imagine by the end of next week, like we'll probably know like the key matches, at least like Swerve and Omega in theory. Like the winner of that should be challenging Max at the pay-per-view, and if you have and an Osprey match as well, like that right there, like these pay-per-views are going to be loaded, and Dynasty certainly does not seem like it will be an exception.
No, like we're playing with the idea of Osprey versus Mox, Osprey pack somewhere in between there as well, and possibly Kenny with Speedball somewhere in the middle. Like all of these matches sound like they're like Andrade Darby sounds like it'll be awesome. Everything sounds like it'll be really strong.
They should like purposely book a bad pay-per-view. Like just put like the worst styles together. Like can we put together a show that just gets panned?
With this roster, I think that's really difficult, John.
Yeah, like only booking is going to harm these shows. But
I think you put any combination of most of these wrestlers together, you're going to end up with some pretty strong quality. Like they just have such a stacked roster.
Yeah, like maybe Satnam Singh does like a gauntlet match.
When was the last time we saw Satnam Singh?
It's been some time. All right, everyone. Well, thank you for staying with us here for the end of our Dynamite review. We're going to be shifting on over to the Post Wrestling Cafe for the remainder of the show as we go through your feedback and all of your questions as Wai and I open our minds to all questions, and we will find out if we have the answers.
Hey, quick plug here for our CN Tower Climb for Nature. John Pollock, myself, Braden Harrington, Davey Portman, Jack Wannon, Jesse from the Six. We are climbing all 1,776 steps of the CN Tower, and we're asking for your pledges to support our endeavor here for the World Wildlife Fund. We do it. We've done it twice before. We're all trying to maybe top our records, or at least come close to it in some of our cases. But we'd love your support. Postwrestling.com/climb if you want to, care about a little sort of health goal that we have for ourselves, and also a little bit about nature if you care about that.
Yes, we're gonna get Wai to do this in under 12 minutes. Okay, that's the goal.
Very lofty, but I will try. Yeah.
All right, I'm ready for this. I'm excited. It's gonna be a fun day.
You're just like waking up every day, drinking your raw eggs.
I've got a chicken running in the backyard. That's right. I don't know if that's allowed anymore, but I've been chasing after it. Lots of training.
Yeah,
I'm ready.
All right.
All right. Goodbye, YouTube. It was nice knowing you.